Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Gentlemanly Podcast with me, Troy Francis. I join you, or you join me, in a rather hot and sticky London town. So I have refuged myself in a secret location, and I'm coming at you with this new episode. So what we're going to be talking about today is broadly building a life that women want to step into. But before we get into that, just a couple of parish notices. Please do, if you haven't already, subscribe to my Substack. This is effectively the daily email, daily letter that I now send out. Some of it will be accessible publicly, other stuff won't be, depending on what tier you're on. But get onto the Substack, so the link is going to be in the description below, because I'm leaning much more into writing now that we've started this new season of the Gentlemanly Podcast. Okay, so blogging was my sort of training ground for this stuff, if you like, and I want to lean back into that. So expect a lot more written content coming out in the near future, and primarily on the Substack feed. Okay, so join that, link below, and I will see you there with some golden content. Okay, so what is this all about? Well, look, and again, this is some content from my 3-month mentoring course, which is called the SAS course, the Social Attraction System. Okay, and when you come on the course, you get mentoring with me, you get a weekly call with me, plus course content, which is doled out on a weekly basis, and it goes through all the aspects of the dating, the modern dating scene, how to navigate it, and how to prosper. Okay, and this is a little glimpse into some of the kind of content that we cover there. This is from one of the later modules, and it really is about building that life that is attractive. So the first thing that you need to do is you want to understand yourself, understand the archetype that you are leaning into. Okay, you want to be bigger than the sum of your parts, right? So you're not just some guy who works in finance, you're not just some guy who works in PT as a trainer, you're not just some guy who is a landscape gardener or whatever it is. You're much more than that, okay? You are the summation of your hopes, dreams, fears, ambitions, etc., etc. So you want to be able to express that to be a sort of truly rounded, attractive proposition, okay? And once you've done that, and once you've thought through that and figured out, okay, so what is it I'm trying to express here? What is it I'm trying to bring to the market, if you think about it in those terms, then you want to build a lifestyle that kind of supports that. You want to have an infrastructure that is your lifestyle that supports that, okay? And you want to embody the attractive man archetype. Now, the attractive man archetype is going to be slightly different depending on you, your personal proclivities, the way you look, the way you want to express, okay? Nevertheless, it is absolutely crucial that you have one. You have a sense of the archetype that you want to embody, and then you build a lifestyle around that that makes sense for that archetype, okay? So we're going to go through a few things here, and what you need to understand is that the answer, if you're not getting the results or the kind of traction that you want in dating, the answer is not always just do more approaching. I mean, it might be, because if you're doing none or you're doing very little, then that's obviously going to have a negative impact on the results you're seeing. But ultimately, it's not necessarily always about that, because, as I've said previously on this podcast, it's fundamentally about what's happening when you first meet somebody, right? What are you creating in that moment? Are you creating excitement? Are you creating magnetism? Are you creating a sense of this guy's got something about him or not? Okay, and only you know that, right? Only you can honestly look in the mirror and say whether you're doing that or not. But if you're not, then you're likely coming across as a bit bland, a bit forgettable, and you're probably not maximizing any opportunities that do come your way, okay? So it's really important to think about yourself as bigger than the sum of your parts, right? And that, rather than just more swipes, more approaches, going to the club more, whatever it is, right? That is going to be the key thing that really differentiates you. Because if you're doing the approaches, but you're not bringing something to the table, you're not bringing some value, some inherent value, dictated by yourself, not necessarily your job or your clothes or anything else. Well, your clothes actually is part of it. We're going to be talking about that later. But then you're leaving money on the table, frankly. So that's what we're getting into here. This is a natural follow through from the last episode, which was about having a strong internal narrative. Okay, this is now saying, right, you've got the strong internal narrative. what does your lifestyle look like? How can you make it attractive so you can pull people into it? And there's a few key pillars here, all right? So they are presentation, or the way that you come across. Then they are where you spend your time. Then the travel multiplier, okay, how travel can help you. This is what we're going to be going through. Then the social gravity effect, how being a social animal can help pull people into your orbit rather than you having to try and break into theirs. And then that's it, okay? So those are the things we're going to be going through rather in this episode. The first one is presentation, all right? So how do you come across, okay? Now, the first thing to say is that the manner in which you present when you are in public, when you're meeting people, when you're socializing, is super, super key, okay? Because remember, dating is fundamentally a value exchange, all right? So the woman that you want to interact with, she has inherent value, okay? Obviously, because you want to get to know her. So let's take that as read, whatever her value is. You know, maybe she's very physically attractive, maybe she's intelligent, maybe she's cool, whatever, or a combination of those things. She has that value, okay? When you come to the table, you also have to bring value with you, all right? You have to bring some value as well, because when you think about an economic exchange system, right, value gets exchanged for value. If you're not bringing any value to the table, other than a couple of lines that you learned off YouTube or, you know, from some book or some blog post or something, then you're not going to get very far, okay? So you need to be bringing value. And the way that you communicate value is, as we said last time, it's not just about what you say, it's about the way that you come across, okay? And this is all of these micro indicators. So once again, things like posture, things like eye contact, things like the tone of your voice, things like, you know, the gravitas with which you speak. And the other thing that plays into this is how other people react to you. Okay, so how you treat other people, and again, this could be the staff in a restaurant or a bar or a cafe, and then how other people react to you. Do you seem to be somebody who is taken seriously by the world around you? You know, do people look around when you walk into the room, right? If it does seem like you're making those waves socially, that's going to be deemed more attractive, right? Because it's showing, without you having to say it, it's showing that you have a certain degree of social power or a certain degree of social capital. If you slink into the room and you kind of look shoddy, you look forgettable, and you're not really making any waves, that's not really going to play in your favor, okay? So the way that you present as far as those physical things are concerned is super, super key. And, you know, tone of voice, obviously, you want to have a relatively deep voice if possible. You want to speak relatively slowly, probably more slowly than I am here because I'm trying to fit all this content in. But, you know, and you want to modulate the speed at which you speak and the tonality and the volume. And, you know, you want to have peaks and troughs in the way that you come across, okay? Because imagine an actor on the stage performing a play. If he spoke in a monotone for the entire play, then ticket sales are going to bomb. All right, so you want to have some drama. You want to create a sort of musicality with the way that you speak. As far as your posture is concerned, obviously you want to look as confident as possible. Now, you might not feel confident, but you want to start practicing things that are going to make you look confident. So standing up straight, shoulders back, all of that stuff, right? Taking up space, okay? You know, not trying to sort of be smaller than you are, trying to be bigger than you are, okay? Strong eye contact, firm handshake, all of these things. It's all very simple, but a way around this, if you're having difficulty with this kind of thing, is to look at people that you know, maybe in the media or maybe in real life, who are super confident, and then look at what they do physically in social situations and just try to copy them. Okay, this is probably the easiest shorthand, the easiest way to get to it, is just copy people that you know who are super confident, even if you aren't feeling that confidence yourself. Okay, it doesn't really matter what you're feeling on the inside. What matters is what you do on the outside, okay? So try that, and I think it will take you quite far. The other thing is how you dress, okay? Now, in the course and previously in content, there's actually a couple of videos on my channel where I've talked about fashion, I've talked about clothing, and I've always resisted being too prescriptive about clothing, okay? Because it was always my view, and it kind of still is, but it was always my view that people obviously are going to have different styles, they're going to be different ages, And so guys are going to have their own, things that are going to suit them more. And the way that I dress is not necessarily going to be for everybody. Having said that, I'm now starting to revise that thinking a little bit, because there is a kind of a global uniform which is going to work anywhere you go, from Mayfair to Marrakesh, from Peru to Portugal, whatever, right? This uniform is going to work very well for you anywhere. So previously, when I've talked about clothing and style and fashion, what I've talked about is basically fit. So fit is really important, okay? You want the thing, whatever the garment is, you want it to fit well to your body shape, okay? That's super, super key. I've also talked about form, and that is to say the material. So is it good quality material, particularly things like suits and coats and shoes and so on, particularly the larger, more complicated sort of outer outfits, T-shirts, vests, things like that, doesn't matter as much, although you want them to be well-fitting, but the fabric probably doesn't matter quite as much. But for outerwear and for suits, suit jackets, blazers, things like this, you want the fabric to be good. And the third F, which I always talk about, is flourish, okay? And ideally, every outfit that you wear, you want to have a little bit of flourish. So maybe a pocket square if you're wearing a blazer, a little bit of color, as long as it doesn't look too try-hard, right? Maybe some nice lining, or some, maybe the buttons, you could have different stitching on the buttons or something like this, okay? You want there to, or you could be wearing a bracelet, or you could be wearing a nice watch, something like that, or a piece of jewelry, maybe just a single ring or something like that. You want to have at least one item of the outfit that people can comment on and can create conversation. The other thing as well is scents, okay? Perfumes or aftershave. That's something to look into as well, and try to avoid just the really obvious stuff. Look at things like Tom Ford. Look at some of Tom Ford's pricier fragrances. Consider that. And a good way around this as well is to go to a department store and actually seek the help of people working there. Say what, because obviously everybody's chemistry is going to be slightly different, and you want to have a scent that works well with your natural odor, if you like. So look into that, and that's another thing that is going to make you memorable. Okay, it's not super key. It's not like, oh, you've got to have the right aftershave, otherwise it's all lost, obviously. But little things like this add up to a larger whole. Okay, so attend to those things. Okay, and as far as styling is concerned, in my opinion, the best thing that you can wear really is the kind of what might be called old money, casual, smart casual look, okay? And that basically is trousers, probably not jeans, unless they're dark denim and they are kind of flawless, right? And jackets, okay? Jackets and shirts, or jackets and t-shirts, or jackets and roll necks, okay? And there's all manner of different styles and shapes you can get. You can get obviously single-breasted jackets, double-breasted jackets. You can get larger lapels, smaller lapels. You can wear ties. You can wear pocket squares. Sometimes both. Sometimes just one. Sometimes neither. You can wear a jacket with nothing underneath if you're feeling bold. You can wear a waistcoat underneath. I mean, there's all manner of different things that you can wear. But when you travel and you go to different places, like you go to Mexico City, you go to London, you go to New York City, you go to anywhere really, you're going to see guys in the more affluent parts of town wearing this kind of uniform, okay? Knitwear, obviously it's really hot here at the moment in London, so I wouldn't recommend knitwear at the moment, but, a thin merino wool or, something nice, mohair or some nice fabric like that can work really, really well. Things like roll necks can look really, really cool underneath the jacket. But basically, if you're puzzled about this, you can drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, and I can give you some further details. Or just look at old money style for men online and have a look at what comes up. And you're going to get a pretty good idea, okay? And what we're talking about here is trying to elevate your personal style. Because the thing nowadays is that around the world, and this is certainly post-pandemic, people are dressing down. Okay, the predominant tone for fashion, for men's and women's fashion, is pretty casual. Okay, athleisure, right? Athleisure brands, and there's nothing wrong with that in itself. But you can go to a restaurant in Mayfair here in London, and very expensive place, and there'll be people there wearing hoodies and tracksuit bottoms, right? and even places like the Ritz Hotel in London. And we recently went to Bemelman's Bar at the Carlisle Hotel in New York. These were very, very smart, upscale places. And now their dress codes are pretty much minimal, if there's a dress code at all. You know, you get people in there wearing trainers or casual clothing and stuff like that. And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a bit of a shame, but there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But the issue is that if you want to stand out from the crowd, you're going to have to make a little bit more of an effort. Now, people will say, well, okay, but Mark Zuckerberg, you know, he wears the same t-shirt and jeans every day, whatever. Okay, well, that's fine for him, but you are not him unless Mark happens to be watching. So it's not really going to get you very far. You know, you want to stand out from the herd, and particularly today, particularly in this globalized dating marketplace that we inhabit, if you don't find ways to stand out, there's a danger that you're just going to get lost in the crowd, okay? Style never goes out of fashion, okay? And there are plenty of stores. So look at Xenia, for example. Look at things like Reiss in the UK, Hawes & Curtis in the UK, if you want a slightly lower end solution. And, you know, look at designers as well. Look at things like Ralph Lauren. You know, Ralph Lauren is a classic example, not just the polo shirts with the emblem on it, but look at some of their other things. You know, look at the jackets, look at some of the more high-end stuff that they do. That's the kind of look that you want to be going for. So for American people, you might think about the sort of Ivy League preppy kind of a look. In Europe, it's the same thing, but with a twist. You know, they're like slightly more Italian, right? And Italian fabrics. Imagine going to a jazz bar in Paris, or imagine going to, you know, Capri and sitting in a cocktail bar on the coast in Capri, or going to Monte Carlo or Monaco, right? What do people wear in those places? Okay, think about that. Think about linens. Think about light colored stuff for the summer. You know, light colored jackets, light colored trousers. Okay, loafers, right? Nice shoes. All right, all of this kind of stuff. And again, I can't go into it in huge detail here, but all of this kind of stuff, it's a uniform that is worn by the more upper echelons of society across the world. Okay, so this is going to work anywhere. It's going to look good, and it's going to stand you in very good stead. It's going to make you stand out a bit. Okay, so again, if you need more information on this or some guidance, then do get in touch, and I can help to guide you as best as I can. But that really, I would say, for most guys, that's going to work very well. It's going to level you up above the pack, right? Because you don't have to be the best dressed person in the world. You just have to be better dressed than the guy standing next to you, okay? And that's not very hard to do in 2025. And this really is the palette that you want to be going for. So if people are interested, I might do some more content on this going forward. But for the time being, just bear in mind, that's the target. That's where you want to be heading, okay? And then, you know, think about where you spend your time, okay? Think about the environments, the venues, the neighborhoods, and so on and so forth. And, you know, not everybody is going to be minded to do loads of international travel. And that's okay. I mean, I would say if you can do international travel and you want to level up with the dating stuff, it's going to be very helpful because your market value is going to be perceived differently in different geolocations, okay? People talk about market value, you know, your sexual market value. And some people are under the impression it's this fixed thing that's going to be the same everywhere, but it really isn't, okay? You know, if you travel to Latin America or Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe or somewhere like that, you're going to be perceived differently, assuming you're like a Western guy. And if you're not, then you travel to other locations, you're going to be perceived differently than you are on home turf, okay? And that's going to tilt things in your favor somewhat, but, and also as well, just the cultural enrichment you get from traveling, right, and the stories and the just meeting new people and seeing different cultures, right, it's just incredibly enriching. But if you can't do that, or you're not inclined to do that, then at least in your own country, you know, go to different places. Go, and if you live in a small town, this is especially pertinent. You need to get out. You need to go to the nearest big town or city, okay? Now, ideally, you want to go to the biggest place you can. So if you're in America, you want to go to New York, or you want to go to Vegas, or you want to go to Miami, or one of those places, okay? But if you can't do that, at least go to the nearest big conurbation, all right? Because the more opportunities you have, the more social opportunities you have, the more practice you're going to get, and the better you're going to get at this stuff, okay? And also, people go to cities to reinvent themselves. And this is something that you can do. You can go to the city and you can be somebody different, even if only for a day, even if only for an evening or an afternoon, all right? So take advantage of that. And if you're already in a decent sized city, or you're already in a decent sized town, okay, great, you're on a sweet spot. But why not try different districts? Why not try different areas? Like in London, for example, we have many, many different areas. So we have Shoreditch, which is very hipstery and sort of quite young and quite trendy. Sort of, I mean, previously quite cutting edge. I'm not so sure now. There's quite a lot of tech type stuff happening there. Then you've got the city, which is, you know, the financial districts. You've got a lot of bankers and people working finance there. Then you've got the West. Then you've got West, places like Chelsea and Fulham and so on, which are the more upmarket type areas. You know, so why not explore different areas in your own city? Why not go to different places? Because you might be surprised. You might find that you're received differently in these different places, okay? And anyway, it's just going to broaden. Firstly, it's going to get you out of your comfort zone, because why just haunt the same areas, the same streets all the time? You might as well go somewhere different. And secondly, you might find that you're received better than you expect. So getting out and about and then creating opportunities for yourself, super, super important. The travel multiplier, it really is a big deal. It really, really does make a huge difference. And then the social gravity effect. So a little bit of a nod to social circle game or social circle strategy here. Why not try to be the linchpin for a few social events wherever you are, right? And if you're traveling, you can do this while you're traveling. If you're in the same city, you can do it in your city. You know, just host a gathering, just get a few people together, okay? And if you're introverted, this might seem out of your comfort zone, but it's worth trying, because within that gathering, you're ultimately, you know, you're going to be perceived as the alpha. You're going to be perceived as the mover and shaker who's put this thing together, who's brought these people together. And so that's going to be beneficial to you. But equally also, it's going to put you out of your comfort zone, okay? It's going to force you to reach out to these people, to have them come, to, you know, to sort of risk the fact that nobody comes, to bring them, to be the linchpin that's bringing everybody together. So it's going to give you, at the very minimum, it's going to give you more practice in socializing. But also, if it's a mixed group and you're bringing in some, you know, some women as well as some guys, you are going to be seen like the alpha within that context, right? Because you're the person who brought everybody together. So it's worth trying, even if just as an exercise, even if it's not the main thing that you want to do the whole time. It's worth giving it a go a few times just to see how it goes and just to get some more experience. Because depending on where you're coming at this from, you know, some people are very socially adept already, but they just need some tuning up as far as the romantic stuff is concerned. But other people, and maybe this is you, find all the social stuff difficult. And if you do, the only way to get around that is to lean into it. Okay, the only way to do that is to put yourself deliberately, as often as you can, into situations that you find a little bit awkward. Okay, and go from there. Because over time, you're going to get a harder and harder shell, and you're going to get more inured to the difficulties of this stuff. And that's going to pay dividends as far as your romantic interactions are concerned as well. Okay. The goal really of all of this, and all of those threads may seem somewhat incongruous at first, but they all connect together in a way, because the goal of all of this is to become a person who is naturally attractive in the broadest sense. Okay, so it's not that you are going out with the tank empty and you're just trying to pull people in. You're creating a life which is itself inherently attractive. So even traveling, right? Even traveling, you're not doing it for dating as such, but it's going to make you more interesting, because travel broadens the mind. Okay, you're going to have stories, you're going to have things to talk about. Okay, you're going to have just references to talk about, to extemporize on when you're in social situations. It's incredibly enriching, it's incredibly useful. And, you know, creating social events and bringing people to those events is also going to be extremely useful to you, because it's going to strengthen that social muscle. And also in those events, you're going to position yourself as the key player, right? All of this stuff, very, very useful. And the clothing stuff, you know, you want to dress the part, okay? You don't want to dress like somebody who's just picked his clothes up off the floor from the night before, or was dressed by his mother or something, right? You want to play the part. You want to stand out slightly from the crowd, and you want to look competent and like somebody who knows how to move through the world, and who isn't, you know, a cheap kind of penny pincher, right? So all of these things combine together, and you can create a lifestyle from these elements that is going to really be the infrastructure upon which the ideal persona that you've crafted for yourself is going to sit comfortably, okay? Because there has to be congruence between that person and the infrastructure beneath it, right? You need structure in order to launch that character onto the scene, into the world. Okay, and this is the way you do it. So the goal really here is to move from chasing to drawing people to you. Okay, to becoming that magnetic guy. Okay, and you have to do that through firstly looking the part, and secondly, having that presence, and secondly putting yourself out there, whether that's globally or at least in your own country or city. All right, and then also putting yourself out there on a limb a bit more socially. Doing some events, having some dinner parties, having some barbecues, pulling people in, is going to pay huge dividends for you. All right, that is it for today. We're going to be back with more episodes of Gentlemanly next week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for the podcast right now. Do follow me on Substack, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.